Hello, and Happy New Year. So, it's a little after New Year's officially, but I had to wait about a good 30 minutes or so to actually start recording because of all the damn fireworks in the neighborhood. Yeah. But anyway, to anyone that finds this in the great ocean of YouTube, stumbles in here to listen, I wish you a Happy New Year. Yep, it is now 2023. The past year seemed to have gone by very quickly, in retrospect. And yet, at some points, it seemed to have dragged on very, very much. But anyway, I digress. For the new year, I will be adding a new type of video to the channel instead of just reviews and, little tutorials. There's going to be some occasional, ASMR reading videos of this nature. Very simple, very straightforward. So, that's about all the introduction. I hope this finds you in good times, helps you relax, perhaps fall asleep. I know for me, after I record this and upload it, I'm going right to bed, because it's late. But I will do a little bit of The Hobbit, and eventually things like Lord of the Rings. But this is just a starting point. And these are some of my favorites. I know for many people it's their favorites. It's very well known, and the influence it has in, creating modern fantasy and fiction it cannot be understated, right? So, I'm not going to do too much, because, again, it's late. This is going to be a somewhat short video. We're only going to do a few pages into this to kind of get it started. Though I am going to do a bit of reviewing this map that we see. I think we see this in the movie, the Hobbit movies, as well as even in the Lord of the Rings movies in the beginning as a sort of Easter egg. But these are mostly the runes pointing to the secret entrance in the mountain, revealed by the moonlight. Right? We have the little city in here of Dale, the river that runs to the lake, and Lake Town points out about Lake Town. We have the river flowing towards the Elf Kingdom, and of course to the south, again, Mirkwood, the elves, and the spiders, a little spider web. To the west and the northwest, you have the Grey Mountains, and of course the Lonely Mountain itself, and Smaug. So, let's see. That's about all there is. It's a very encompassing map of the area. So, without further ado, The Hobbit, or There and Back Again. Okay. So I'm only going to perhaps go to like page 10 or so. In a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit. Not a nasty, dirty, wet hole filled with the ends of worms and an oozy smell, nor yet a dry, bare, sandy hole with nothing in it to sit down or to eat. It was a hobbit hole, and that means comfort. It had a perfectly round door, like a porthole, painted green with a shiny yellow brass knob in the exact middle. The door opened to a tube-shaped hall like a tunnel, a a very comfortable tunnel without smoke, with paneled walls and floors tiled and carpeted, provided with polished chairs and lots of pegs for hats and coats. The Hobbit was fond of visitors. The tunnel wound on, going fairly but not quite straight into the side of the hill. The hill, as all the people for many miles around called it, and many little round doors opened out of it, first on one side, then on the other. No going upstairs for the Hobbit. Bedrooms, bathrooms, cellars, pantries, lots of these. Wardrobes. He had whole rooms devoted to clothes. Kitchens, dining rooms, all were on the same floor, and indeed on the same passage. The best rooms were all on the left-hand side, going in, for these were the only ones to have windows, deep-set, round windows, looking over his garden, and meadows beyond, sloping down to the river. The Hobbit was a very well-to-do Hobbit, and his name was Baggins. The Bagginses had lived in the neighborhood of the hill for time out of mind, and people considered them very respectable, not only because most of them were rich, but also because they had never had any adventures or did anything unexpected. You could tell what a Baggins would say on any question without the bother of asking him. This is a story of how a Baggins had an adventure and found himself doing and saying things altogether unexpected. He may have lost the neighbor's respect, but he gained... Well, you will see whether he gained anything in the end. The mother of our particular Hobbit... What is a Hobbit? I suppose hobbits need some description nowadays, since they have become rare and shy of the big people, as they call us. They are, or were, a little people about half our height. If this camera would focus. Okay. Half our height, and smaller than the bearded dwarves. Hobbits have no beards. There is little or no magic about them, except the ordinary, everyday sort, which helps them to disappear quietly and quickly when large, stupid folk like you and me come blundering along, making a noise like elephants, which they can hear a mile off. They are inclined to be fat in the stomach. They dress in bright colors, chiefly green and yellow, wear no shoes because their feet grow natural, leathery soles, and thick, warm brown hair like the stuff on their heads, which is curly. They have long, clever, brown fingers, good-natured faces, and laugh deep, fruity laughs, especially after dinner, which they have twice a day when they can get it. Now you know enough to go on with. As I was saying, the mother of this hobbit, of Bilbo Baggins, that is, was the famous Belladonna Took, one of the three remarkable daughters of the old Took, head of the hobbits who lived across the water, the small river that ran at the foot of the hill. It was often said, in other families, that long ago one of the Took ancestors must have taken a fairy wife. That was, of course, absurd, but certainly there was something not entirely hobbit-like about them. And once in a while, members of the Took clan would go and have adventures. They discreetly disappeared, and the family hushed it up. But the fact remained that the Tooks were not as respectable as the Bagginses, though they were undoubtedly richer. Not that Belladonna Took ever had any adventures after she became Mrs. Bungo Baggins. Bungo, that was Bilbo's father, built the most luxurious hobbit hole for her, and partly with her money. That was to be found either under the hill, or over the hill, or across the water, and there they remained to the end of their days. Still, it is probable that Still, it is probable that Bilbo, her only son, although he looked and behaved exactly like a second edition of a solid and comfortable father, got something a bit queer in his makeup from the Took side, something that only waited for a chance to come out. The chance never arrived until Bilbo Baggins was grown up, being about 50 years old or so, and living in the beautiful hobbit hole built by his father, which I have just described for you, until he had in fact apparently settled down immovably. By some curious chance, one morning long ago in the quiet of the world when there was less noise and more green, and the hobbits were still numerous and prosperous, and Bilbo Baggins was standing at his door after breakfast, smoking an enormously long pipe that reached nearly down to his woolly toes, neatly brushed. Gandalf came by. Gandalf! If you had heard nearly a quarter of what I had heard about him, and I have only heard very little of all there is to hear, you would be prepared for any sort of remarkable tale. Tales and adventures sprouted up all over the place wherever he went, in the most extraordinary fashion. He had not been down that way under the hill for ages and ages, not since his friend the old Took had died, in fact, and the hobbits had almost forgotten what he looked like. He had been away over the hill and across the water on business of his own since they were all small hobbit boys and girls. All the unsuspecting Bilbo saw that morning was an old man with a staff. He had a tall, pointed blue hat, a long grey cloak, a silver scarf over which his long white beard hung down below his waist, and immense black boots. "Good morning," said Bilbo, and he meant it. The sun was shining, and the grass was very green, but Gandalf looked at him from under his long, bushy eyebrows that stuck out further than the brim of his shady hat. "What do you mean?" he said. "Do you wish me a good morning, or mean that it is a good morning whether I want it or not, or that you feel good this morning, or that it is a good morning, it is a morning to be good on?" "All of them at once," said Bilbo, "and a very fine morning for a pipe of tobacco outdoors, into the bargain. If you have a pipe about you, sit down and have a fill of mine. There's no hurry. We have the day before us." Then Bilbo sat down on a seat by his door, crossed his legs, and blew out a beautiful grey ring of smoke that sailed up into the air without breaking and floated away over the hill. "Very pretty," said Gandalf, "but I have no time to blow smoke rings this morning. I am looking for someone to share an adventure that I'm arranging, and it's very difficult to find anyone." "I should think so, in these parts. We are plain, quiet folk, and have no use for adventures. Nasty, disturbing, uncomfortable things. Make you late for dinner. I can't think of what anybody sees in them," said our Mr. Baggins, and stuck one thumb behind his braces and blew out another even bigger smoke ring. Then he took out his morning letters and began to read, pretending to take no more notice of the old man. He had decided that he was not quite his sort and wanted him to go away. But the old man did not move. He stood, leaning on his stick, and gazing at the hobbit without saying anything, till Bilbo got quite uncomfortable and even a little cross. "Good morning," he said at last. "We don't want any adventurers here, thank you. You might try over the hill, or across the water." By this he meant the conversation was at an end. "What a lot of things you do use good morning for," said Gandalf. "Now you mean that you want to get rid of me, and that it won't be good till I move off." Not at all, not at all, my dear sir. Let me see. I don't think I know your name. Yes, yes, my dear sir, and I do know your name, Mr. Bilbo Baggins. And you do know my name, though you don't remember that I belong to it. I am Gandalf, and Gandalf means me. To think that I should have lived to be good-morninged by Belladonna Took's son, as if I was selling buttons at the door. Gandalf! Gandalf! Good gracious me! Not the wandering wizard that gave old Took a pair of magic diamond studs, that fastened themselves and never came undone till ordered? Not the fellow who used to tell such wonderful tales at parties about dragons, and goblins, and giants, and the rescue of princesses, and the unexpected luck of widows' sons. Not the man that used to make such peculiarly excellent fireworks. I remember those. Old Took used to have them on Midsummer's Eve. Splendid. They used to go up like great lilies and snapdragons and laburnums of fire and hang in the twilight all evening. You will notice already that Mr. Baggins was not quite so prosy as he liked to believe. Also, that he was very fond of flowers. Dear me, he went on, not the Gandalf who was responsible for so many quiet lads and lasses going off into the blue for mad adventures? Anything from climbing trees to visiting elves, or sailing in ships, sailing to other shores. Bless me, life used to be quiet. You used to upset things badly in these parts once upon a time. I beg your pardon, but I had no idea you were still in business. Where else would I be? Said the wizard. All the same, I am pleased to find you remember something about me. You seem to remember my works kindly, at any rate, and that is not without hope. Indeed, for your old grandfather Took's sake, and for the sake of poor Belladonna, I will give you what you asked for. I beg pardon, I haven't begged for anything. Yes, you have, twice now. My pardon, I give it to you. In fact, I will go so far as to send you on this adventure. Very amusing for me, very good for you, and profitable, too. Very likely, if you ever get over it. Sorry, I don't want any adventures, thank you. Not today. Good morning. But please come to tea any time you would like. Why not tomorrow? Come tomorrow. Goodbye. With that the hobbit turned and scuttled inside his round green door, and shut it as quickly as he dared, not to seem rude. Wizards, after all, are wizards. What on earth did I ask him to tea for? He said to himself as he went to the pantry. He had only just had breakfast, but he thought a cake or two and a drink of something would do him good after this fright. Gandalf, in the meantime, was still standing outside the door and laughing long but quietly. After a while he stepped up and with a spike of his staff scratched a queer sign on the hobbit's beautiful green front door. Then he strode away just about the time when Bilbo was finishing his second cake and beginning to think that he had escaped adventures very well. The next day he had almost forgotten about Gandalf. He did not remember things very well, unless he put them down on his engagement table, like this: Gandalf Tea Wednesday. Yesterday he had been too flustered to do anything of the kind. Just before tea time, there came a tremendous ring on the front doorbell, and then he remembered. He rushed and put up on a kettle and put out another cup and saucer, an extra cake or two, and ran to the door. I'm so sorry to keep you waiting, he was going to say, when he saw that it was not Gandalf after all. It was a dwarf, with a blue beard tucked into a golden belt, and a very bright eyes under his dark green hood. As soon as the door was opened, he pushed inside, just as if he had been expected. He hung his hooded cloak on the nearest peg, and "Dwalin, at your service," he said with a bow. Now, I think this is a good point, because it ends quite cleanly here. We'll get into the introduction of the dwarves, but I think we'll cut it off here, just as a short video. Alright? So I need something quickly as a little slip of paper as a bookmark. And we will pick this up in a upcoming episode, video. So once again, thank you for watching, for listening, primarily. And again, Happy New Year, everyone. And good luck to everybody on 2023. Good night.